Sophia stumbled forward, her legs heavy as lead, her lungs burning from the thick smoke. She collapsed beside Emma and Shadow, pulling her daughter tightly into her arms, tears mingling with the ash and dirt streaking her face. "Emma, I'm here," she choked out, her voice breaking with emotion. Emma trembled in her mother's embrace, sobbing uncontrollably, her small hands still clutching the puppy as if terrified it, too, might vanish. "I thought I'd lost you," Sophia whispered, pressing her forehead against her daughter's. "I thought so too," Emma replied, her voice faint like a dying breath, yet her eyes flickered with a spark of hope as she glanced at Shadow. Shadow lay beside Emma, its body a steadfast barrier, its deep brown eyes fixed on Sophia with silent resolve. It gently rested its head on her shoulder, the warmth of its ash-covered fur seeping through her tattered coat. "You saved her," Sophia said, her voice faltering, her trembling hand stroking the fur between Shadow's ears. "You saved me too." The dog didn't respond, only letting out a soft huff, but its gaze spoke volumes, a loyalty unshakable, a will of iron that had dragged them back from the jaws of death. Nearby, the puppies huddled together, whimpering faintly, their tiny bodies shivering from the cold and fear. The fire still roared behind them, just a few dozen meters away, its brilliant orange glow piercing the smoke like an unrelenting threat. The crackling of burning wood echoed relentlessly, blending with the howling wind like the cries of a ravenous beast. Sophia looked up, realizing they hadn't yet escaped this horrific trap. The fire wasn't just a blaze, it was a living nightmare, a predator that never tired, and it was closing in with every passing second. Adrenaline surged through her once more, her heart pounding as if it might burst. Shadow suddenly stood up, ears perked, nose twitching as it sniffed the air. It let out a sharp, powerful bark, commanding like a soldier on the battlefield, then bolted forward, cutting through the ash-strewn, debris-littered slope. "It wants us to keep going," Emma said, her voice trembling but firm, still clutching her puppy tightly. Sophia nodded, though her body was beyond exhaustion. She didn't know where Shadow was leading them, but she trusted its instincts, the instincts that had kept it alive through 3 months of disappearance, the instincts that had brought it back to them in their direst moment. Sophia helped Emma to her feet, rewrapping the scarf around the puppy pressed against her chest. "Hold my hand," she said, gripping her daughter's icy fingers. Emma nodded, lifting her own puppy and pressing it into her coat. Shadow glanced back at them, barking once more as if urging them on, then resumed leading the way. The other puppies stumbled after their mother, their short legs slipping on snow and rock, but Shadow wouldn't let anyone fall behind. It paused every few steps, nudging each one with its nose, ensuring the little pack stayed together. They climbed a steep incline, the frigid wind slicing through Sophia's tattered clothes like a knife, carrying hot embers that seared her skin. She clenched her teeth, hiding her agony from Emma. Behind them, a loud explosion erupted. Another pine tree crashed down, unleashing a storm of fire and denser smoke. "Hurry!" Sophia shouted, pushing Emma forward. Shadow picked up speed, darting through charred underbrush, its agile claws gripping the rugged terrain. Sophia felt her lungs might burst, each breath a battle, but she didn't dare stop, stopping meant death. The path sloped downward, guiding them into a narrow ravine where sheer cliffs rose like natural walls on either side. The wind howled through the gap, whipping smoke and ash around them like a giant serpent in pursuit. Shadow led them through the tight passage, its body low to dodge smoldering branches hanging overhead. A small twig fell right in front of Sophia, sparks scattering onto her coat. She flinched, quickly smothering them with her bare hands, the sting sharp but silent. Emma didn't need more fear. They pressed on, emerging from the ravine into a sparser stretch of forest where trees thinned and snow lay thicker. Sophia sensed a shift in the air, the smoke still stung, but the heat had lessened, as if they were pulling away from the nightmare's core. Shadow halted abruptly, lifting its head to sniff, ears twitching. Then it barked twice, short and sharp, turning to Sophia and Emma with urgent eyes. "What is it, Shadow?" Sophia rasped, her voice hoarse, but before she could process it, a new sound reached her, the rush of water. Shadow surged ahead, leading them to a wider stream, its surface not fully frozen but flowing sluggishly beneath a thin layer of ice. The cold water reflected the distant orange glow of the fire, yet it stood as a natural barrier between them and death. "It wants us to cross," Emma said, her voice quivering but resolute. Sophia nodded, testing the ice with her boot. It was thin but seemed sturdy enough to hold them. "One at a time," she ordered, kneeling to guide Emma across first. Emma stepped onto the ice, hugging her puppy close, moving slowly but steadily. Sophia held her breath, heart pounding as she watched her daughter traverse the span. When Emma reached the far bank safely, she turned back, waving weakly. "Your turn, Mom!" Sophia took a deep breath, clutching her puppy tighter, and stepped onto the ice. It creaked under her weight, but she stayed calm, inching forward. Just a few steps from the edge, a loud crack split the air, the ice gave way beneath her, and she plunged into the freezing current. "Sophia!" Emma screamed, her voice laced with panic. The water rose to Sophia's waist, its icy grip sapping the last of her strength. The puppy in her arms whimpered, thrashing in the scarf. She grabbed at the ice's edge, but her hands slipped, too weak to pull herself up. Shadow sprang into action, leaping onto the thin ice without hesitation, claws digging in to maintain balance. It seized the collar of Sophia's coat in its jaws, yanking her toward the bank with astonishing force. Emma rushed to the water's edge, arms outstretched to help as Shadow dragged her mother to safety. Sophia sprawled on the snow, gasping for air, her body trembling from cold and exhaustion. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emma asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sophia nodded faintly, pulling her daughter into a hug. "I'm fine, thanks to Shadow." She looked at the dog, now soaked and panting, yet standing tall like a soldier who'd never surrender. The remaining puppies staggered across the ice with Shadow's aid, each gently nudged to the bank by its nose. They had no time to rest. The fire's roar grew louder, its orange light spreading through the trees behind the stream. Shadow barked again, urging them to run along the bank where the terrain sloped upward once more. Sophia felt her body breaking down, her legs ached, her hands numb, but she gritted her teeth, refusing to let Emma see her falter. They scrambled over a large rocky outcrop, Shadow bounding ahead, then pausing to wait with patient yet pressing eyes. As they crested the rocky outcrop, an unexpected sight unfolded before them, a shallow cave tucked beneath the cliff, its narrow entrance just wide enough for the group to slip inside. Shadow stood at the opening, letting out a short bark as if beckoning them into this safe haven. "This is where it wanted us to go," Emma said, her voice lighting up with hope. Sophia nodded, guiding Emma through the entrance first, then passing the puppies one by one with trembling hands. When she finally crawled in after them, her body collapsed onto the cold stone floor, utterly spent. Inside the cave, the air was chilly but calm, smoke drifting past the entrance without settling within. Shadow entered last, curling up near the opening, its body a steadfast barrier between the danger outside and the family it refused to lose again. Sophia leaned against the rock wall, cradling the puppy that had fallen asleep against her chest, her breathing still labored but steadier now. Across from her, Emma sat pressed against Shadow, gently stroking its ash-laden fur. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered, her voice soft but unwavering. Shadow huffed in response, shifting closer to her, a silent promise. "I'm here, I'm not going anywhere." Sophia watched her daughter and Shadow in the dim light filtering through the cave's entrance, her heart warming despite the icy cold. For months, she tried to pull Emma from the grief of losing her father, from the silence that had built a wall between them, but she'd failed. Now, in this cave, amid the nightmare of fire and smoke, Emma had returned, not lost in sorrow, but alive with faith and love for Shadow. Sophia crawled closer, wrapping an arm around her daughter and resting her head against hers. Emma didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into her mother, her steady breaths mingling with the faint whimpers of the sleeping puppies. Outside, the fire still roared, but the cave offered a temporary refuge, a small fortress amid the chaos. They sat there, waiting, listening as the wind and the crackle of flames grew more distant. After hours, as the darkness of night gave way to the pale light of dawn, the smoke began to thin. Sophia stood, peering out the entrance. The sky remained hazy, but patches of blue emerged, a sign that the worst of the blaze had passed. The air still carried the sharp scent of ash, but it was no longer suffocating. Then a new sound broke through, the thrum of helicopter blades echoing across the ridges. Sophia fumbled for the emergency light in her pack, raising it high and switching it on to signal for help. "Rescue!" Emma cried, her voice weak but elated. Shadow rose, ears pricked, sniffing the air as if confirming something. Within minutes, a helicopter appeared, circling before landing in a clearing not far from the cave. The rescue team rushed out with blankets, water, and a flurry of questions. A tall man in a rescue uniform approached, his eyes widening in astonishment at the sight of them. "We followed him," Emma said simply, pointing at Shadow before anyone could ask. "He saved us." The lead rescuer glanced at the soot-covered dog and the 4 puppies stumbling around its feet, then chuckled. "One hell of a trail guide," he muttered, motioning for the team to usher them aboard. Shadow leapt up first, settling beside Emma, its head resting lightly on her lap like an ever-present guardian. The puppies clambered in after, one playfully nipping at Emma's shoelace, drawing a giggle from her. Sophia boarded last, sitting beside her daughter and Shadow, her eyes meeting the dog's deep gaze. "Home," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Shadow didn't bark or move, but its steady, resolute stare said everything. It had brought them home, not just to a physical shelter, but to a place where they reclaimed their bond, their trust, and their survival after months lost in darkness. As the helicopter lifted off, Sophia looked out the window, watching the charred forest fade into the distance. The fire had taken much, but it couldn't take her family, not while Shadow was there, its loyalty and resolve overcoming every nightmare. She squeezed Emma's hand, feeling her daughter's warmth and Shadow's steady breaths. They had survived, and now, together, they would rebuild.